1 second. All right, perfect. Okay, so so Thayne is going to talk active straight leg raise with us, kind of going through progressions, regressions, FMS, starting with FMS and then kind of going from there. And so I'll just turn the time over to you, Thayne, and we'll start rocking and rolling. Does that sound good?
This is Maddie.
And we've got the camera woman. Awesome.
RJ, can you hear me?
Is someone... Oh, no, we're good. We're good.
You good?
Yeah, something popped up, but we're good.
RJ,
Yep.
can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So the first thing that we're going to talk about is just the FMS itself. The active straight leg. The active straight leg, the test is they're setting up just like this. Essentially, I'm bringing my leg up and I'm bringing it back down. Now, there's two things we got to look at. We got
Wait, so real quick. So real quick, Thayne, while you're down there, go back down to the ground for me real quick. So guys, just to clarify, it's just a little hard to hear you, Thayne. We can hear you pretty good, but it's just a little hard to hear you. So you can see he's got the bar at his knees, and essentially with active straight leg raise, he's raising his leg off the ground, and then we're seeing how that leg, where that leg ends up in relation to that bar that's on the ground, as well as what happens to that other foot. Does it externally rotate? You know, what happens there? So he'll talk through that. So I just wanted to clarify that's what we're looking at.
Also, it's important to look too, if I'm laying here and my ribs are sticking up, I already know my core is not engaged. So we're looking at, is my core engaged? And I'm going through this leg lower. Now, as we do this in a group setting, we're not going to lay everybody down and test them on the board. Everyone's going to lay down in a circle and they're going to do their leg lowers. As a coach, I need to make sure what I'm looking for. As RJ pointed out before, the leg that's going down, I want to see how high I can come up. With the leg that's down, what's it doing? So I have to bring it up off of the ground, and that's going to tell me where they're going to start to get those corrected stuff, to make that the best active straight leg. Remember, we want twos in scoring at all times. So if they score a 2 on both sides, then we can go ahead and load that pass. Now, if they can't get to that, and the scoring is, if I'm laying down, and I can't bring my heel.
Do me a favor. Go from the side, Maddie, on him. So lie down again, Thayne. I'll explain it to you while you're lying there. So as he lies down, if he's able to get his heel past his basically the bottom part of his knee, okay, then he scores a 2. Okay, if he's able to get his heel past the midpoint, we find a midpoint between the bottom of his knee and his hip, right? If he's able to get his heel past that point, which is about halfway up his thigh, then he scores a 3. Okay, so what we're looking for on the test, remember this is ASLR, so this is a test that we're running, you know, in our first sessions. Okay, on ASLR, we're looking for an imbalance, so either a score of a 1 and a 2, or a 1 and a 3, or we're looking for 1s. Okay, those are the main 2 scores that we're looking for as far as issues and problems in the ASLR.
Yes. Thank you, RJ. Now, I gotta squeeze this pad. Biggest thing I need to make sure my heels, toes have to be touching, and I'm squeezing this pad. Hands go directly in the air. Now, the reason why we go directly in the air is I gotta see can they maintain this without falling over. I'm here, step to the side a little bit. Pushing my hips back. Trying to touch my toes. Now, if they can't touch their toes, they stop here. We want them to bend their knees and still touch their toes. We want to get them in that habit. So again, if I can't touch my toes here, I'm going to bend my knees and I'm going to finish. We do that 3 or 4 times. Then I'm going to step back, toes up, same thing. Can we maintain standing here without falling over? Here, same thing. Pushing my hips back, trying to touch my toes. Again, I stop here. I need to bend my knees, then touch my toes to complete that. The biggest thing too is for most people don't know how to engage their core. So a cool little trick that Great Cook does, if I only score a 1 on the test, that RJ talked about, my heel can't go past my knee. To get them to a 2 that day, all I have to do is come here. Now, this is a corrective for them to do at home. I lie here and I pull the band all the way down. Okay, same thing. Bring my leg up, bring it down. This corrective blow.
So real quick, stay there for a second, Thayne. So on that, so you notice why, going back to why we do things, right? Why do we do things? Why do we do things? Why do we do things? So when he's bringing that band down, right, his core is having to engage, right? His core is having to get involved. And so that's what he's referring to. Because oftentimes when we think of active straight leg raise, we think only hamstring flexibility, right? That's all we're thinking. We're thinking, okay, if I can bring my foot up, then obviously I have the hamstring flexibility, right? But a lot of it has to do with your core stability as well. What happens with that bottom leg? And also, do you have the core stability to be able to raise that leg up and get it to where it needs to be, right? It doesn't necessarily always have to do with the back side. It has to do with the front side as well.
Now, again, that's a corrective that they could do at home that I like to assign for homework myself. That's going to help them out tremendously. Now, again, in a group setting, you want to do the band. This leg remains up. Here. And coming through. That's a good one in a group. If you wanted to get to 2s pretty quickly, the one that I showed you before, again, it's not the most ideal in a group, but great for homework assignment. So now that we've warmed up, now we're just talking the SLDL, strictly SLDL. So, based on how people are moving, as I'm watching them in the group of the leg lowers, I could see what their legs actually doing. Are they opening up? Right, that's what I'm looking for. Are they doing this kind of stuff? Are they come up here? What are we looking for? Based on how they move, I'm going to set them up to succeed and to set myself up for success. So what I mean by that is we have an 18-inch box. We got our slider. I'm going to have 2 foam rollers. This is how I'm going to set up, and this is where I'm going to start. The movement that we're mimicking is this right here. We want everybody to be able to stand on one leg and come out. That's the movement for the SLDO. And because of that, we have to make sure we mimic that same movement. Okay? So, you're going to take 18-inch box with a slider. I start here. Biggest thing you got to cue the client is if I tell them just to go back, they're going to do this. This is not what I want. These rollers are going to move here. I have to mimic the same movement here. Okay?
So Thayne, real quick, while we're doing this, I got this pulled up on my phone here. I'm going to try and share the screen while we're doing this. But go ahead and keep talking.
Okay, so I got my leg here, 1 point of contact. 2 foam rollers, 3. Back leg, I got 4 points. This is where we're going to start people. Once I own this movement, I could take 1 roller away. Now I got 3. And they still own that same movement. Okay? That's pretty easy. And I take away another foam roller. Go through this. Same thing. Can they own that movement? A lot of times when you take away that other foam roller, they're going to start doing this. Because they still don't know how to hinge properly.
Okay, I've got this set up. Okay, so guys, so just wanted to show this real quick while we're talking through this before he moves on to the next one. So you can see here, he started with band-supported leg lower, right? He was lying on the ground. There was 2 different band-supported ones, okay? Then he went from unsupported leg lower, okay, where he was on the ground with no band, okay, to the 18-inch box SLDL holding 2 foam rollers, then 1 foam roller, then the box and the slider, right, and then the slider on the bench, right? So you can see the progression. The reason I wanted to point this out is you can see the progression as you go through, you know, line 1, line 2, line 3, line 4, and you notice as he's going through it, they all are in that same line of they're showing you know, this equals this equals this equals this. As you go through the line, it's showing, you know, all the movements look the same, right? You notice the one on the back looks exactly the same as the one on the top, right? It's the same exact movement, just a different way of doing it, progressing people and getting them better, right? I just wanted to show that before we continue going.
Okay, so where I left off was I let go of that last foam roller. I just want to drive home this point. If I have the foam roller for them, this roller, it needs to move with it. It can't just stay here and go through. I gotta show them extension. Remember, this exercise or this movement is doing something that we do different rather than sit all the time. So I sit, hip flexors, psoas gets tight. We want to do opposite here. I want them to get long and stretch that out. Okay? Once I get rid of this roller, I got to see, can they still maintain this? Can they own this movement? Is their chest falling? Is it staying up? What is it doing? The next thing I like to do is have them actually hug a weight. Nothing heavy, 10 pounds. They set up. This is going to force them to go where I want them to go. Now, one last thing you got to look at. What is this back leg doing as I'm sliding it back? Am I going straight back, or is it doing this number? You'll get that a lot. How is that hip moving? Why is it shifting? So, once they get this movement, I'm hugging, I'm going down. They show me that they own this movement. For me, I take them to a bench. So I got an 18-inch box, big surface. Now, going to this bench, a little bit skinnier. How well is that knee and that leg moving back straight? Again, once they own this movement, I like to load it. This pattern, I can still load it with this here. I don't want to go higher than 25 with the weight. The TFSC guys came out. They said you could load this pattern, but nothing higher than 25 with the bench. So I'm here. Before I give them the weight, can they own that? Then I can give them the weight. I don't have to start with 20. I can start with 8, 10, 15. How are they holding this? Right? I got to make sure they're holding and coming up through this. Again, once they
Thayne, real quick, I'm going to do the same thing again. Show them a different sheet here. Give me just 2 seconds here, guys. Bear with me. There we go. All right. So you can see, guys, here that he's going through similar progression regression patterns, right? One leg, assisted one leg, single leg deadlift, the foam roller, right? He hasn't talked crotch reaching, but talking 1 kb, one leg, single leg deadlift, 2 kb. So once again, he is showing some added teaching tools in there, right? But it's following the same progression regression sheet. We showed you the other sheet, going through, but it's the same progression regression sheet, so you can be able to kind of connect the dots in your head. Okay, ASLR, at the end of that chain, you've got barbell, one leg, single leg deadlift, right? So that's the line of thinking that you're going down as you look at this hip hinge pattern, but also look at that ASLR and how this equals that. All these things, guys, one thing equals the other all the time. That's a regular thing all the time. Go ahead.
Yeah, that's perfect. So, and I'll show you what RJ's talking about too. So, if I'm laying down on the ground and I'm doing my leg lowers, if I stood myself up or just turned myself around, right, upside down, it's that exact same movement. Everything is the movement. If I correct somebody or put them on a box and have them slide, if that's not doing an adaptation to make them better at that, then I got to think of something else. That's why we could start with 2 foam rollers on the box, and I slide back. Then I go to 1, then I go to 0. I can always retest myself too during my leg lowers the next time in my group, or just have them drop right there to see if that's helping them. So it's all the same movement. It's no different. From a leg lower on the floor to me standing up, to me on the box, then to me on the bench. We're just having them own all of those movement patterns before we just let them go just body weight. From body weight, then we do it with the weight. We can progress this at any time or a different load pattern. I could be here on the side. I could go on the same leg, suitcase hold. Or I could do 2. So, whatever load pattern, once they own the movement, that's what's going to help them.
So guys, that's really important. I want to emphasize, what he's talking about on owning the movement before loading the pattern, right? And I'll give you an example. I had a guy I shared on Instagram yesterday, a guy that I've been training for the last probably 6-8 weeks, older guy, and we've been working on his hip hinge pattern because it's terrible. And we have not loaded him at all, and finally loaded him for the first time yesterday. I'll try and pull up the video here in a second. Finally loaded him for the first time yesterday or 2 days ago, and his movement pattern looks really good and really clean. We haven't loaded him up. He's been training with me for 8 weeks roughly, and this was the first time that I loaded him up. Found other ways for him to get fitness, but from a movement standpoint, didn't feel comfortable loading up until he could prove that he owned the movement.
Yeah, and going off of what RJ was saying, guys, it's how you deliver it and how confident you are. It doesn't matter who it is. I could have them start on a box with 2 rollers or 1 roller, and I'm saying, own this movement first. Prove to me that you can do this, then I can take stuff away. But I have to be confident and I have to know how to set things up, but also, give them an exercise or a movement that's going to actually give them a workout. Clearly, we could look at the My Zone on your screens if you have them at your clubs. I could see if that is going to work them with 2 rollers, or is it 1? If I take away the roller, can they even stand here without falling over? Your My Zone, that's the great thing about it, it's going to help out.
Thayne?
Did we lose him?
I think we might have lost him.
Can I just say one point on what he just covered? Because me and him talked a ton about this. Guys, what he's really saying too, why you don't load the bad pattern is when you add load to a pattern that's incorrect, you're hitting the save button on your body, right? And so if, he showed how to do it wrong, if he's loading that up with 100 pounds of load, which you'll see some clients do, you're saving that pattern now, and now you're on a trajectory for injury. And so that's why it's so crucial, why we have all these steps, why we have all these tools, why we have all these progressions, is so that we're setting up our clients for success and not injury. And otherwise we wouldn't mess with all of the hassle to get somebody to move well. It's not easy to get somebody to move well, but it's absolutely worth it. So looks like they're coming back on.
Got it. Great.
Phone died.
The phone died?
It drained it. I had 100%. But
Nothing like having your phone die at 6:30 in the morning.
Well, turns out Zoom sucks a lot of battery. Okay, so is there any questions that anybody has that I can answer, or anything that I missed?
So I just wanted to, while people are thinking of questions, you can put them in the chat if you want. But while people are thinking of that, one thing I wanted to point out is that whole concept. Again, we continue to talk about it, but it's so important. Is this is that, right? This equals that. Whenever you see something, ASLR equals deadlift. Right, trunk stability in that FMS is push up, plank, rotary stability, bird dogs. All these things they translate across the spectrum. And so once you have an idea of that starting point and that ending point of where they want to get to and where we want to get them to, once you have that, right, and then it's a matter of constantly showing the client through that process, hey, look at the steps that you've made. You went from, that going back to that list we were talking about, you went from supported leg lower, to doing a single leg deadlift with a barbell, over the course of X amount of time, right? And continuing to get better and finding the, he gave all those fine little pieces to fix, how do you fix this, fixing that, fixing this, fixing that. Right, that's all important, but it's that same patterning of starting with that baseline and then progressing through and working people through that system, and that's how people get better week in and week out.
Yeah. So it also is important to make sure you write things down. You have the client write it down, or you could write it down at the end of the session, because it's good to go back. What RJ was saying is, hey, look, you started with 2 foam rollers supported on a box, 3 months ago, and now I could show you and prove to you that you don't have to have. A lot of times people forget. They don't know what their progress is. They don't remember. So it's really important to make sure you write things down or have them write it down. Sometimes they forget, so I jot stuff down really quick myself, so then I could show them and prove to them that they've gotten better. Sometimes they think it's the same thing. I got to do this again. This is my world. Yeah, this is going to be your world if you don't do your homework. I have to get you here. I can't get you any further if you don't do the things I ask you to do. But it all comes back to being confident. If you're not confident in what you're doing, they're going to see through that very, very quickly. Oh, just go on a box, and it just doesn't look good. It's got to be that same movement all the time.
Great. Perfect. Well, if nobody has any other questions, guys, we appreciate your time this morning. Do me a favor. If you're still here at the end and you're an intern, text turtle dove to your head trainer. Turtle dove to your head trainer. Okay. Appreciate that. You guys have a wonderful Thursday. Thanks.
RJ,
you did a wonderful job. Didn't you do great? So good.
Hey, RJ, one thing.
Please.
Will you guys give some feedback if you like the live version of stuff that we do, or more talking, or do you like both? You want a written and live demonstration, I guess, so that we could keep making this better and better.
Perfect. Couldn't agree with that statement more. Thanks, Thayne. You're the man. Appreciate you guys. Have a wonderful morning.